Welcome to Reformed Thinking. So, I was browsing a job board the other day. I do this sometimes, just out of curiosity to see what's happening in the landscape.
Right.
And I was looking at postings for senior pastors' positions at some fairly large evangelical churches. And honestly, if you stripped away the church name and maybe one or two specific references to Sunday services, you would swear you were looking at a listing for a regional manager for a mid-sized tech firm.
It is startling when you see it in black and white like that, isn't it? You see those bullet points. Must be a visionary leader.
Oh, absolutely. Proven track record of scaling organization.
Dynamic communicator.
I actually saw this one, strategic stakeholder management. For a church job description. And it made me stop and realize we are in the middle of a kind of a silent crisis. We're undergoing this massive tectonic shift in how we view leadership. And I don't think we really realize how far we've drifted. We're elevating the professional over the proven.
That distinction right there is the heart of the matter. It really is. The professional is a set of credentials. The proven is a character.
Yes.
And what you're describing, this lust for the CEO pastor, it's a very subtle shift. It's not like we're explicitly saying, oh, we don't care about holiness anymore.
No, of course not.
It's that in our zeal for efficiency, for growth, for, cultural relevance, we've swapped the biblical mandate for shepherds, for a corporate idol.
But let me play devil's advocate for just a second. Churches are organizations. They have budgets, they have buildings, they have staff. Don't we need a guy who has some administrative acumen?
Sure.
A holy man who bankrupts the church isn't exactly helpful to the kingdom, you know?
And that is the common pushback.
Yeah.
It always is. And let's be crystal clear. Administrative skill is not a sin. Competence is not an enemy of the gospel. If a man can read a spreadsheet, that's a good thing. The problem arises when we prioritize those functional skills above the domestic piety that's required by Scripture. We are seeing search committees routinely bypass the evidence of the private home because they are just so enamored by the public figure.
They want the guy who can hold the room.
They want the guy who can hold the room even if he cannot hold his own children's hearts.
And it's this idea that a man can be a disaster in private but a success in public. And as long as the sermons are fire, to use the modern vernacular, we just look the other way.
Precisely. And that right there brings us to the mission of this discussion. We are going to dismantle that whole pragmatic approach. We need to look at what the Apostle Paul, writing under divine inspiration to Timothy, actually established. He creates a checkpoint that you just cannot bypass.
A non-negotiable.
A non-negotiable. He says the household is the seminary of the pastorate.
And we're looking specifically at 1 Timothy 3, verses 4 and 5.
Yeah.
This is the text that confronts this modern error just head on.
It's unavoidable. The central idea of this text is this. A man is disqualified from stewardship in God's house if he has failed to steward his own house.
That's a strong statement.
It is. And we need to be clear right from the start. This is not a suggestion for work-life balance. This isn't Paul saying, hey, make sure the pastor takes a day off so he doesn't burn out. This is a theological axiom.
It puts the stakes incredibly high.
It does. Because the family is the microcosm of the church. It's the laboratory where a man's ability to lead is tested and proven. If a man cannot shepherd the souls of his wife and children, protecting them from error, leading them in worship, maintaining order, he possesses no capacity to take care of the church of God.
So that's the image we need to keep in our minds then. If the bricks, the family are crumbling, the cathedral, the church, it just cannot stand.
That is exactly the right way to see it. So let's get into the text itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at what you've called the grammar of leadership. We need to do some exegetical analysis here. The text says a bishop or overseer must be one that ruleth well his own house. Now, rule is a loaded word in 2026.
Very.
It sounds authoritarian. It sounds like a dictator.
It does to our modern ears,
Right.
which is precisely why we have to get back to the Greek to see what Paul's actually saying. The word he uses here is proistēmi.
Proistēmi. Okay, break that down for us.
Well, it's a compound word. You have pro, which means before, and histomi, which means to stand.
Okay.
So the literal lexical force of the term is to stand before or to be at the head of.
To stand before. That's interesting because when I think of ruling, I think of a king sitting on a throne looking down on everyone, but standing before suggests something spatial. It's a different image.
It changes the image entirely. And it immediately corrects two very common errors we see in men today.
Yeah.
First, it rejects the passive manager,
Yeah.
the absentee landlord father who sits in the recliner, signs the checks, and lets mom do all the heavy lifting.
Right.
He's not standing before anything. He's hiding behind something.
He's leading from the rear. He's the guy who says, go ask your mother.
Exactly. But secondly, it also rejects the tyrant who drives his family like cattle from behind. The biblical picture of proistēmi is much closer to a military captain or maybe a shepherd in a hostile field. He stands in front of his charges.
He's the shield.
He is the shield. He creates the perimeter.
So if there's a threat, whether that's a spiritual threat or a cultural lie or just the chaos of life, it has to go through him first.
He cuts the path. He's the first one into the breach. That is what ruling a home actually looks like. It's exposure. It is taking the hit for your family.
Wow. That is a much heavier burden than just being the boss. It sounds sacrificial.
It is inherently sacrificial. And then look at the grammar Paul uses. This isn't just a suggestion. He uses what's called the present active participle.
Okay, for those of us who maybe skipped Greek class in seminary or never went, why does the participle matter so much? It matters because in Greek syntax, the present participle denotes continuous durative action. It's a motion picture, not a snapshot.
So you can't just point to that one time you did a family devotional 3 years ago and say, see, I ruled.
No, that doesn't cut it. It's not about a guy who occasionally leads family devotions when he feels guilty about it. It describes a man whose settled character and habitual lifestyle are defined by this standing before.
So it's a characteristic.
He is characterized by a constant, active presidency over his home. If you took a video recording of his life for 6 months, the overwhelming data set would show a man who is engaged, present, and leading.
It's a lifestyle requirement. I'm thinking about going to the gym. You can't say I'm a weightlifter because you went one time in January. You're a weightlifter if you are essentially always in a cycle of lifting.
That's a very fair analogy. It's a state of being. And the object of this rule, this leadership, is his own house, or idiou in the Greek.
That phrase seems to emphasize the sphere of personal responsibility. Idios means one's own, right?
Yes. And the oikos, the household, in the first century was a very comprehensive unit. It could include servants, financial affairs, maybe even extended family living there. But the context here, as we'll see, it clearly focuses on the children.
This leads us right to the logical core of the passage. You call this the a fortiori argument.
This is the engine that drives the whole text. And a fortiori argument is an argument from the lesser to the greater.
Okay, so walk us through the logic there. Which part is the lesser and which is the greater?
The own house is the lesser sphere. And I don't mean lesser in importance, not at all, but lesser in difficulty. Think about all the natural advantages a father has in his own home.
Well, first off, you pay the bills. That gives you some serious leverage right there.
Huge leverage. You control the resources, you control the schedule, you decide if the Wi-Fi stays on or not. But it's more than that. You have blood ties. There is a natural affection, a biological bond between a father and child that predisposes them to love you even when you're imperfect.
You're the dad.
You're the dad. The deck is stacked in your favor.
So Paul is saying, look, you have the home field advantage here. This is your training ground.
Exactly. Now compare that to the Church of God, which is the greater sphere. The church is composed of all these diverse families who do not share your DNA. You're dealing with supernatural bonds, not just blood ties. You're dealing with intense spiritual warfare. The resistance is often much, much greater.
And you can't just ground a church member or take away their car keys if they act up.
Right. The tools of authority are completely different. So the logic is inescapable. If a man cannot exert moral influence where he has all these natural advantages, it is exegetically impossible for him to exert spiritual authority where the difficulty level is significantly higher.
That makes complete sense. It's like saying, if you can't even ride a bicycle with training wheels, you certainly can't ride a motorcycle on the highway.
That's a very good analogy. If you cannot lift the 50-pound weight of the home, do not attempt to lift the 500-pound weight of the bride of Christ. You will get crushed, and you will crush the people under you.
And Paul gets even more specific about what this rule looks like. He says, having his children in subjection with all gravity. Now, subjection, that is another one of those words that makes modern people really uncomfortable.
It does.
It sounds like we're crushing their spirits or something.
It does, but again, we need to understand it biblically. The word is hypotogo. It has military undertones. It means to arrange under or to subordinate oneself to a chain of command. It implies that the home is not a democracy.
It's an ordered structure.
It is an ordered regime under the lordship of Christ.
But then comes that crucial modifier, with all gravity.
This is the crucial nuance. The Greek word is semnotos. It refers to dignity, stateliness, a kind of moral seriousness.
So this modifies how the father rules.
It likely applies to the father's manner of ruling, though it certainly reflects on the children's response as well. It effectively prohibits a domineering or harsh style of leadership. A father who secures subjection through terror, through screaming, through physical intimidation. He has not fulfilled the text. He has violated the gravity of the office.
That is a huge distinction. You can have obedient kids who are just terrified of you. They're quiet because they're scared. According to this text, that man is disqualified.
Correct. Because the goal is respect, not just compliance. The elder must rule in a way that commands semnotos dignity. It's an honorable rule. The children obey not because they've been battered into submission, but because there's a sense of rightful order that the father upholds.
And this connects perfectly to the next segment we need to talk about, because we have to look at the parallel passage in Titus. This is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of guys.
Yes, Titus 1.6. A critical text.
Paul is writing to Titus, who is in Crete, and the context there is pretty chaotic, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Titus was left in Crete to set things in order. The Cretan culture was notorious. You had rebellious talkers and deceivers who were, quote, upsetting whole households. So these domestic qualifications aren't incidental here. They are the frontline defense against cultural chaos.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting. And frankly, this is the debate that can break apart elder boards. The text in Titus says an elder must have children who are pista.
Right, and here we enter the battlefield of translation and interpretation.
Because pista can mean believing, as in saved, regenerate Christian children, or it can mean faithful, as in trustworthy or obedient. And depending on which Bible translation you have sitting on your lap, it might say either one.
That is right. You'll see both.
Now, I know good men, faithful, godly men, who have stepped down from ministry because their 16-year-old wasn't a Christian yet. They felt this text demanded that they produce a convert.
I've seen it too.
And you can see the logic, right? If the pastor's the professional Christian, shouldn't his product be Christians?
That is the argument. It's a pragmatic argument.
Yeah.
But if we stick to our Reformed theological framework, that interpretation just collapses. We believe that salvation is of the Lord, as Jonah 2.9 says. A father cannot regenerate his child's heart. He cannot force the Holy Spirit to act.
So if we interpret believing as saved, we are requiring a man to do something only God can do.
Precisely. And that would create a qualification that depends on God's secret election rather than the man's faithful stewardship. We would be asking a man to perform a miracle as a prerequisite for the office. It's an impossible standard.
But surely there's a correlation. A good dad is more likely to have saved kids, right?
Of course. A faithful father is the ordinary means God uses to save children, no question. But we cannot make regeneration the hard requirement. And look at the context. Paul clarifies what he means immediately. He adds a negative qualifier.
Right after pista.
Right after. He says the children must be not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination.
Okay, let's define those terms because they give us the guardrails. Debauchery, what does that mean?
The Greek word is aisutia. It refers to a wasteful, riotous life. The best picture is the prodigal son in the far country, spending his inheritance on wild living. It's a life of excess and waste.
Got it. And insubordination.
That's inipatakta. It means a stubborn refusal of authority. Anarchy. A refusal to be subject to anyone.
So if you put it all together, Paul isn't asking, has this father secured an invisible spiritual transaction in the child's soul?
No.
He's asking, is this child a wild, riotous rebel who brings shame on the family name and the name of Christ?
Exactly. The standard is judicial and pastoral, not speculative. The question is not, can this man guarantee conversions? The question is, does his household display an ordered, credible obedience that fits with godliness?
So it's really about reputation, isn't it? Public witness.
It is. The text uses the phrase above reproach or not open to the charge. This implies a public reputation. We aren't talking about private rumors or the fact that a toddler threw a tantrum in the supermarket.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. We're talking about a credible, repeated pattern that is known to the community.
If a man's home supplies the community with evidence of chaos, his witness is compromised.
And that is the key. If the town police know the pastor's kids are the ringleaders of the local riot, How can he stand in the pulpit and call the church to holiness? He has no moral leverage. His life contradicts his message.
And this isn't just a New Testament idea, is it? This concept of the household seems woven into the entire Bible. It isn't like Paul just invented this for Timothy out of thin air.
No, it is absolutely foundational to the whole biblical story. We need to trace this pattern through redemptive history. We can go all the way back to creation. Adam was the covenant head. He was given a garden to work and to keep. He was the first manager, and it was the immediate fruit of the fall.
Disorder in the home.
Disorder in the home. Blame shifting. The woman you gave me. The breakdown of domestic order was the very first result of sin entering the world.
Because the very first crisis in human history was a failure of proistēmi, a failure to stand before. Adam stood by while the serpent spoke.
That is a chilling way to put it, but yes, absolutely. He abdicated his post. And then we see the recovery of this pattern with the patriarchs. Look at Abraham. In Genesis 18, verse 19, God explains why he chose Abraham.
What does he say?
He says, "For I have known him, to the end that he may command his children and his household after him, that they may keep the way of the Lord."
Wow. So he was chosen specifically to command his household, not just to believe for himself, but to order his house.
To catechize them,
Yeah.
to lead them.
And
then you move to the Mosaic covenant, Deuteronomy 6. Where is the primary place of instruction in Israel?
it's the home.
It isn't the tabernacle, it's the home. You shall teach them diligently to your children. The Passover itself was a domestic rite. It was a father explaining redemption to his son at the dinner table.
It's intimate, it's local, it's family-based.
And then the New Testament picks up this exact language and explicitly calls the church the household of God, the oikos theiko.
So that is the theological synthesis. The office of elder is not a CEO. It's not a manager. It is a spiritual father.
And this has huge implications for how we view gender roles as well. It stands as a bulwark for complementarianism. The text just presupposes male headship. One cannot uphold male leadership in the church while denying it or being passive about it in the home.
It's inconsistent.
It's completely inconsistent. If a man abdicates his headship at home, whether through passivity or by, yielding to the egalitarian spirit of the age, he disqualifies himself from leading the church.
And it also cuts against our modern pragmatism.
Absolutely. Business acumen is just irrelevant to the care of souls if the domestic foundation is rotten. A man might be able to balance a multi-million-dollar budget, but if he cannot govern his children, he lacks the specific spiritual gift required to care for the Church of God.
So let's get practical then. I can hear the guys listening to this saying, okay, I get the theology, I see the argument, but what do I do? What does managing well actually look like on a Tuesday night when the kids are fighting and the homework isn't done?
Right. We need to apply what theologians call the third use of the law, how this command guides our obedience not for salvation, but out of gratitude.
So for the guy listening who wants to be a pastor someday, what's the advice? What's the first step?
The advice is this. Stop looking for a pulpit and start pastoring your family. The home is your primary diocese. If you are too busy with your seminary papers to read the Bible to your toddler, you are failing the test. You are trying to get the credential while ignoring the qualification.
That's a powerful thought. So we've identified 4 sort of observable criteria of a well-managed home. Let's run through them. Number 1, ordinary spiritual leadership.
This isn't a performance. That's the key. It's not about putting on a show when guests come over. It means he prays. He speaks of God and the natural rhythms of life. And crucially, he does not outsource religion to the youth pastor or the Christian school.
That is a big one, the drop-off mentality. I pay the Christian school tuition, so they handle the Bible stuff.
That is a complete abdication of proistēmi. He must take responsibility for the spiritual temperature of his house. He needs to know what his kids are learning. He needs to be the one answering their hard questions about God.
Number 2 on the list, husbandry.
This is how he loves his wife. She is not an accessory to his ministry. She is not a prop on the stage with him. Is she cherished or is she crushed?
What does a crushed wife look like in a ministry home? What are the signs?
She looks tired. She looks silenced. She looks like a woman who is carrying the weight of his public image rather than resting in his love. Does he listen to her? Does he bear her burdens? A man who leads well at home has a wife who flourishes under his care, not one who withers away.
That's a good diagnostic. Number 3, discipline.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road for a lot of dads. Discipline must be clear, it must be firm, and it must be gentle.
Clear, firm, gentle. Unpack gentle, because we talked about that idea of gravity earlier.
No. Must mean no. If a father says stop and the child ignores him 5 times before he finally explodes in anger, that is not managing well. That's chaos, followed by tyranny. But gentle means he controls his own spirit. He must avoid provoking his children, which Ephesians 6 warns us about.
How does a dad provoke his kids?
Sarcasm, instability, impossible standards, those things provoke. Sarcasm is a big one. Dads think they're being funny, but they are cutting the kid down at the knees.
And it creates a wound.
It creates a wound and it creates distance. A ruler who mocks his subjects will eventually face a rebellion. It's just a matter of time.
And number 4, atmosphere.
We go back to that word semnotos, dignity. There should be a sense of gravity in the home. Now, this isn't a funeral home atmosphere. Christian homes should be full of joy, laughter, and loud singing. But there is a moral gravity where sin is taken seriously.
It's not the artificial quiet of fear.
No, it's the peace of order.
I love the distinction you make about law and gospel in the home, because we're not just talking about behavior modification here. We aren't trying to raise little Pharisees.
No, that is moralism. That creates whitewashed tombs. The shepherd theologian in the home uses the law to expose the need for a savior. When a child sins, the father doesn't just say, "Stop that because I said so."
What does he say?
He says, "This behavior shows that you have a sinful heart just like Daddy, and we both need Jesus."
So the discipline itself points to the cross.
Exactly. The home should be a workshop of grace, not a showroom of perfection. It needs to be a place where forgiveness is practiced constantly. And the father should be the first one to repent when he sins against his family.
Now, whenever we talk about this, people get nervous. They have specific scenarios in mind. What about this? What about that? We need to handle some of these difficult cases because life is messy.
It is. And nuance is required here. We must apply the standard without lowering it, but also without making it cruel or legalistic.
Okay, scenario A, the adult child. You have a pastor, he was faithful, he did his best, but now his 25-year-old son has walked away from the faith. He's deconstructing online. Is that dad disqualified?
This is the nightmare scenario for so many faithful parents. We have to make a crucial distinction between authority and influence.
Okay.
A father has authority over children who are in the home, under his roof. He has influence over his adult children. A grown child's rebellion does not automatically disqualify the father. Unless it is traceable to a long pattern of earlier abdication or hypocrisy. If the son says, "I left the faith because my dad was a tyrant who preached grace on Sunday and beat us on Monday," then yes, he is disqualified. The fruit reveals the root. But if the father was faithful and the mystery of sin takes the child away, we must remember that parents are not the Holy Spirit.
So we looked at the dad's track record. Was he faithful when the boy was 10, 12, 14?
Exactly. We judge his stewardship, not just the final outcome, which is in God's hands.
Okay. Scenario B, the rebellious teenager, the kid who was 16 living in the house and is just testing every boundary. Maybe he got caught drinking or he's refusing to go to church with the family.
Here we have to distinguish between a season of turbulence and a settled culture of defiance. Every teenager tests boundaries. That's part of growing up, separating, and becoming an adult. The question is this: is the father actively shepherding through the rebellion?
He's engaged.
Is he engaged? Is he pursuing the child's heart? Is he praying for them?
Versus the dad who just gives up.
Right. Is he resigned? Is he saying, well, kids will be kids and just letting it slide?
Yeah.
Or is he so angry and controlling that he has lost the relationship completely? A father who is actively, biblically wrestling for his child's soul during a hard season is actually demonstrating leadership.
Yeah.
He is in the fight. That's the qualification.
That's a great point. Okay, scenario C, disability or special needs.
This is a very important one. Providential limitations are not moral disqualifications. A child with autism, for example, might struggle with what looks like submission in a neurotypical sense. They might have meltdowns. They might not be able to sit still in church.
And a judgmental congregation might look at that and say, he can't control his kid.
And that would be a cruel and unbiblical application of the text. The test is always, is there faithful oversight appropriate to the situation? Is the father caring for that child with patience and dignity and love? We cannot penalize a man for the providence of God. In fact, a father who loves a special needs child with that kind of patience is demonstrating the very heart of Christ.
That is really helpful. Let's hit the 3 big misapplications you see. The first one is perfectionism.
Right. The error here is demanding sinless children. It's the, if your kid misbehaves in church, you're fired mentality.
I have seen that happen. It's tragic.
It is tragic. The correction is in the text itself. It asks for managing. Managing implies dealing with problems. If there were no problems, you wouldn't need a manager. The qualification's about how you handle the sin, not the absence of sin.
Misapplication number 2, authoritarianism.
We touched on this. The error is equating submission with silence or fear. My house is quiet, therefore I manage well.
But silence can be the silence of a prison, not a home.
Correct. And the correction is that requirement of dignity, of semitos. Tyranny destroys the church. If you rule your home with an iron fist, you will batter the sheep of God.
Yes,
you will create a culture of fear in the congregation because that's the only tool you know how to use.
And the third one, misapplication number 3, abdication.
This is the boys will be boys mentality. The error is saying, I can't control them, so it doesn't matter what they do.
The passive dad. The buddy dad. The dad who wants to be liked more than he wants to lead.
Exactly. And the correction is that phrase, his own household. He is responsible. He cannot shrug his shoulders and outsource it. He is responsible for the environment and the response to sin. He has to step up.
This has been heavy, but really good.
Yeah.
But we can't leave it just on the man's shoulders. If we end here, every father listening is just going to feel crushed and defeated. We have to look at the archetype.
We must end with Christ.
Yeah.
We absolutely have to. We must point to Hebrews 3, verse 6. Christ is the true householder. Christ as a son over his own house. Whose house are we?
And Jesus perfectly synthesizes all the things we've been talking about, doesn't he?
He does. He synthesizes authority and care. He rules with absolute gravity. He upholds God's perfect holiness. He doesn't sweep sin under the rug, but he also rules with infinite care. He lays down his life for the sheep.
He faces the danger first. He proistēmi'd the wrath of God for us.
That's it. He stood before the wrath of God to protect his bride. He took the blow that was meant for the family. Human elders are just under-shepherds. They are pale, imperfect reflections of the great shepherd.
So for the man listening right now who feels the weight of this, how does he do it? Because if he tries to do this in his own strength, he will just become a legalist or a failure. There's no middle ground.
You can only do it through union with Christ. The gravity required is not a personality trait he can muster up. It is the fruit of the Spirit. Jesus said it plainly, apart from me, you can do nothing. A man can only love his wife sacrificially if he is drawing from the sacrificial love of Christ for the church. He can only be patient with a rebellious teen if he remembers how patient Christ is with him every single day.
And we have to rest in the gospel indicative. That's key.
This is vital. We do not rule our homes to be justified. We rule them because we have been justified.
That takes all the pressure off. It changes everything.
It changes the motivation entirely.
Mm-hmm.
When a father fails, and he will fail, when he loses his temper, when he neglects family worship, he does not despair. He doesn't say, well, I'm lost, it's over. He repents. He flees to the cross. He apologizes to his kids. He shows them what repentance actually looks like in practice.
The home becomes a place of constant grace.
Gospel-driven home is where sin is constantly being washed in the blood of the Lamb.
That is a beautiful place to land. It turns the home into a place of redemption, not just a place of rules.
It is the only place to stand.
So as we wrap up, we have a final charge to the men of the church.
The days of passive fatherhood must end. The enemy plunders the house by binding the strong man. That is what Jesus said. We need fathers who will stand before their families as Christ stands before the church.
We need men who are present. We need men who are not afraid to be the bad guy sometimes, for the sake of the good of their family.
We need men who will take up the mantle, who will protect their little churches from the idols of the age, from the chaos of the world.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on this week. Reflect on this. If your family life was the only sermon your church ever heard, what gospel would they believe you preach?
Would they believe in a gospel of grace and order? Or a gospel of chaos? Or maybe a gospel of fear and performance?
It is a sobering question, but a necessary one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a privilege.
We'll see you next time.